Hello, good evening, everybody. Hello, Teacher Velvet. Good evening, everyone. I hope you have taken your dinner, or maybe you're taking your dinner. I'm not sure. Thank you for joining us this evening for this sharing. Okay, so before I begin, let me share my screen first. Okay, so we are here tonight. Velvet, are you able to see my screen? Yeah, so we're here tonight for our primary 5 and 6 English and writers parent briefing. Now, although we call it a parent briefing, I know a lot of you have your children with you, and I do hope that the P5 and 6 students are with us, because whatever I'm sharing with your parents, you should know, because we want you to help them to help you. Okay? So both you and your parents can work together to help you do better in your schoolwork. Okay? So today's briefing, we are focusing on certain areas. But before I begin, let me introduce myself. I'm Mavis, the head of English at My Stretcher. And with me tonight is teacher Velvet. She's a senior teacher. She's very experienced as well. So if you have any questions about P5 and 6 tonight, please feel free to type it in the chat or the Q&A. We'll try our best to answer them, as many questions as possible by tonight. Okay, there will be a Q&A segment at the end, maybe about 15 minutes. But in the meantime, if any question comes up, please feel free to ask as well. The chat is visible to me, so if I think this is a good time to answer your question, I will do it live as well. Okay, so can I just have a show of hands, or just type in chat, okay, so that Teacher Velvet and I know our audience a little better. How many of you here are primary 5 and 6? If you're primary 5, can you type P5? If you're P6, can you type P6? Just to give us an idea of the 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 audience here tonight. A lot of P6s. Hello, how are all of you feeling? It's the first week of school as a P6 student. How are you feeling? You can share an emoji with Teacher Velvet and I, okay? Some P5 students. Okay, so today's sharing will, because P5 and 6, we're all preparing for PSLE. So of course there are a lot of overlapping pieces of information, but there is something that the P5s are experiencing that's new, because from P4 to 5, there's a change. And your parents are aware, right? Parents, you are aware there is a jump, but for all subjects. Okay, so I'll address that. And of course, for the P6s, you're stressed. For P6s, always remember, and I'll say this right at the start, okay, because if this is done, then everything that we are going to share with you tonight will work. And the word is consistency. Every day, you must plan or revise something. And it's not just reading your textbook, because we know that's the least effective, right? You have to do your practices. For English, there are no topics or chapters. You can already begin working on components that you're not so strong in. Okay? So consistency. Consistency is key. For today's briefing, we are going to look at these things. Okay? There are a lot of things we want to share with you when it comes to English. And upcoming, we are going to have many master classes, English master classes, okay? In those master classes, we'll dive deeper into the various components. So for today, we are going to focus on a few things. Firstly, MOE's academic expectations for upper primary. So what are you supposed to achieve? What are they assessing you for? Okay? Uh, what are the common performance gaps? Now, common performance gaps, students, you know, I hope you know where your weaknesses are, where you're losing marks. Today, I had some questions for some of my students in class. I asked them, how do you usually do for composition? And some of them cannot remember. So these are things that you need to know, because when you know where your strengths and areas for improvement are, then can you target, right, what to work on, okay? So common performance gaps, and some strategies for you, students, and for parents, so that you can work together to help your child achieve better results, okay? So for our P5 students, for our P5 students, P6s, you know, for P5 students this year, from P4 to 5, many people will say, oh, the content is tougher. But what is tougher content? Is it just content? It's not actually just content. Of course, the passages are getting longer, the words are getting a bit more difficult, wider vocabulary, right? But in terms of writing and reading and comprehension, it's more demanding. So it's not just the content, but the skills required, it's more demanding. So in terms of the first point, let's take a look at the first point. Idea development, right? When you think about composition writing, it's not just, oh, if I do not make any grammatical errors and I talk about the topic, it's enough. Now we are looking at development, thorough development of the theme and at least one meaningful picture. Okay, so from P4 to 5, you are going to learn to do that. And for the P6s, uh, tell teacher Velvet and I, just quickly get to know you. How are you doing for composition writing? Upon 36, give us the breakdown, okay? How much you're getting for content and language? How much you're getting content for content and language? Just share with us in the chat. So idea development. The other thing about writing, it's misconception. Must write 5 pages or how many pages? 7 pages. Some students ask me, should I write 7 pages? It's not about the length, but are you able to write something that's engaging, relevant, well structured and sequenced, and flows really well? So these are these are more demanding writing skills. Okay. In terms of comprehension, OE, open-ended, in P4, many questions are more literal, fewer inferential ones. But by P5 and 6 and P6s, they are a lot more complex, more demanding. A lot of explain why, 2 marks. Explain how, 2 marks, right? Inferential questions that require you to interpret the text correctly, which then requires you to have wide vocabulary, knowing how sentences are phrased to convey certain pieces of information or meaning. Okay? And this last point here, language control. I know it's important to know some really good phrases, right? Because you want to be more precise in the way you describe, and you want to show that you have you have a wide vocabulary and you know how to use it correctly. So learning a lot of vivid words, great. We want you to do that. But at P5 and 6, it's no longer just using them randomly. Because we do see that with teacher Velvet, I'm sure you see some really vivid, good phrases, but it doesn't work here. So the student has memorized it, but actually does not know how to use it. So at P5 and 6, you're not just going to go, oh wow, lots of vivid phrases, high marks. No. Did you use it correctly? Is it accurate? Do you know when to use a vivid phrase and when to use something simpler? Okay, so greater language control. This is available on the MOE website, okay? But we are putting this up here so that everyone is on the same page, P5 and 6. For P6s, a refresher for you. There are 4 papers, and we're all aware of that. Paper 3, listening, 10%. And many students strive to get full marks. So for today's sharing, I'm not going to zoom in so much on paper 3. Though I must say that for listening, for parents who are tuning in today, during our time, listening comprehension is I'll say it's not too difficult, right? Very often, it's not too difficult to get full marks. The listening comprehension now requires a bit more from our students in terms of their language and inferential skills, language in terms of vocabulary. What they hear and what they see in the options might not be the same word. Do they know? Do they know their synonyms? Okay, can they make inferences? So it's not all questions are so straightforward anymore. Okay, so that's for paper 3. Now, for paper one, I think there are only two students who shared their marks with us. What about the rest of you? Share your composition scores with teacher Velvet and me, okay? For paper one, whatever I've highlighted, accuracy, appropriate vocabulary, like I mentioned, grammar, punctuation, and spelling. Okay, we are going to dive deeper into paper one later. And of course, being able to organize your ideas clearly. For paper two, there's so many components, right? But paper two is mainly mainly to test your vocab and grammar and inferential skills. Okay, so they're testing, there are many sections, but grammar MCQ and grammar close, they're testing grammar directly. Synthesis and transformation is still testing your grammar, whether you can structure ideas grammatically. So grammar and vocabulary, the basic building blocks, these are areas you can build. Grammar rules you can learn and you can practice, okay? Paper four, oral communication. Reading aloud, most students don't tell me they have issues with reading aloud. Okay, some do, some are still working on it. Okay, the painful thing about oral communication for many students is the stimulus-based conversation, right? Your teacher poses you a question and you give an answer. After that, you get stuck. So that's very common. Fortunately, there are frameworks and there are ways to practice and train. Okay? The key thing about oral communication is they want to see if you can speak fluently. Like conversation. When someone asks you, oh, tell me a bit about yourself, you don't go, huh? So you're able to speak confidently and fluently using correct structures. So this is an overview, and you need to know this. You need to know this, parents and students. Okay, there are four papers, and you do want to note that writing is 25%. Oral, they bumped up the percentage. Oral is now 20%. So they are very close in terms of weighting, right? Writing is as important as oral communication. Okay, so we need to spend time in both these components as well. Let's talk about continuous writing. And this is when I'm going to look at all your scores for continuous writing. So for the P6s, you have gotten more practice. What about the P5s? How do you do for P4 composition? Give us your score, okay, so that we get an idea. So parents, if you have seen your child's composition, marked composition, what do you usually see on a marked composition your child receives? Can we have some responses in the chat as well? Like when you receive the marked composition, what do you spot? Do you, for example, spot feedback? Are there comments given to your child? Does the school provide a rubric? Does your child get a specific mark or just a range? Because we hear different practices in different schools, right? So what do you see presented in this marked composition? And what does your child do with it? So very often when we think about composition writing, mark script, and then the first thing the parent often sees is the mark. Well, where you get this mark? And then you must improve. That's the end of the conversation, right? And very often, if it stops there, nothing is going to change. So for composition writing, we really have to be very disciplined. We really need to know what is required for us to do well. Now, this is a rubric you see on the screen. This is aligned to what MOE uses. Okay. And schools use versions of this. Yeah, schools use versions of this. And thank you, LZ, for sharing feedback like improve grammar, spelling, punctuation. So when we have feedback like improve grammar, spelling, punctuation, then the next question is, does your child know what to do with this feedback? Right. So, oh, my teacher say I must improve spelling. Okay. Then full stop. Follow-up action. Okay, so we need to ask ourselves how can we follow up that there is consistency. So in this rubric, I want to just take you through this because I realized in my interaction with many students, they are not so sure what these descriptors mean. Okay, what is fully relevant? What's the difference between fully relevant and relevant? Some of my students are stuck at relevant. They're stuck at relevant. They can't go up. So they're wondering, they're frustrated, right? Okay, so let me just share with you. When we look at addressing the topic and relevance of ideas, and we say a composition is fully relevant, a very simple way of thinking about it is this. From the opening sentence till the closing line, the whole composition is relevant. There are no irrelevant pieces of information. There are no side stories that show that the child is distracted. There are no pieces of information which makes the marker go, huh? Why are you telling me this? So a fully relevant composition from start to end has pieces of information in there are really important for the story to work in addressing the topic. Okay? Yeah. So let's say you write a very beautiful opening about clouds and birds and waking up in the morning, right? Beautifully written, not no grammatical errors, but the composition is not about a beautiful day or beautiful weather. And the opening paragraph describes the sky, the birds, the wind. That to the examiner, beautifully written, but really relevant. Just the opening paragraph. That from paragraph 2 onwards, oh, okay, now the student is addressing the topic. So we want to avoid that. Okay? So from start to end. When it comes to interest, so some people might think interest is very subjective, right? Whatever interest teacher Velvet might not interest me. So is this very subjective? For writing, for writing, when we talk about interest or something that's highly interesting, it is not so subjective. How to make a piece of writing interesting? The use of techniques, good writing techniques, right? An effective opening hook, effective characterization, okay? The use of techniques. So when to use flashback, when to use foreshadowing, is the child able to use these good writing skills and good writing techniques, right? So if you're in our writers class, these are covered in the writing skills. Do you know how to use the writing techniques well and correctly? When you do that correctly, when you know how to use dialogue correctly, when you know how to use dramatic short sentences correctly, then there'll be interest and engagement, right? Because you're using a variety of writing skills to engage the reader. Thoroughly developed, I think this is quite straightforward. If the topic is friendship and your whole composition talks about the formation of the friendship, the conflict that could occur in the friendship, how problems are resolved, and how these two people have strengthened their friendship through these challenges, then yeah, it's thoroughly developed, right? From start to end. Okay, so that's content. Is it possible to get full marks? Yes, it's possible to get full marks. So the highest you can get is 36 for composition. Language, accuracy, hardly any errors. One or two errors, very minor ones. So flawless grammar, expression, spelling, punctuation, no errors at all. That would be the top band 5, right? Many students are at 3 or 4. Many students are at 3 or 4. So if you know, you can work towards accuracy. Okay? If you are making grammatical errors, what kind of grammatical errors are you making? Is it tense? Maybe not. Could it be the use of phrasal verbs? Maybe. Okay, so you need to know, students, especially P6s, if you have not done this during the holidays, have all your compositions and all your paper tools with you, and you go and take a look. Where are you losing all your marks? And from now to PSLE, when you are revising, you should be targeting those areas, right? You should be targeting those areas. Okay? So you need to know where you need to work on. Vocabulary wide and appropriate. I mentioned this just now. Wide means you know what words to use to best communicate an idea, an emotion, how to use vocabulary to create atmosphere, to describe characters. Okay? Plus, they must be appropriate. So they must be used well and correctly. If you're ambitious, you try to use a simile, but you used it wrongly, then we are looking at some inappropriate use, right? Or if you made one or two mostly appropriate. And lastly, a lot of students, by the time they reach this part of the rubric, they're not looking anymore at the third descriptor, sequencing, paragraphing, and linking of ideas. Paragraphing, I still see this error. I'm not sure if teacher Velvet does. I'm pretty sure she does. Paragraphing of things like dialogue. You need to know these basic rules, right? If a different character is going to start to speak, you need to create a new paragraph. You read that in storybooks as well. So you need to apply these rules, okay? And then paragraphing, every time a new idea or a new setting or a new character comes, you start a new paragraph because every paragraph has its own main idea or person or mood, okay? When it comes to sequencing, some students use flashback technique. Then they forget to close the story properly. Or as they're telling the story, they create a backstory that pops out of nowhere. So now the reader is confused. Oh, where am I now, right? Linking of ideas, the use of linking words, signposting, signal words to make it easy for readers to follow you. Okay? So these are what the examiners are looking for. We are not looking for super long compositions. We are not looking for bombastic words. And we are not looking for fantasy ideas like out of the world, magic, unicorns. No. Or lots of twists. I need to say today, teacher Violet, today a student told me that she's advised to use twists in her compositions. And in the rubric, it doesn't say, right? Give more marks if a student uses a twist. So the teacher who advises that might be thinking it could go under highly interesting, but a twist that confuses the reader is going to make things worse because then it becomes a confusing composition. Don't waste time on creating a twist. I would rather you develop your plot character properly. Okay, so a twist is not necessary. Do not use illogical ideas, things that are funny to you, but actually don't make sense. Okay, so don't do that. Quick summary of high performing scripts. Okay, look, can I have a show of hands? How many of you plan before you write? Plan, not plan in your head. Plan on paper because everyone plans in their head. If you plan on paper, can you raise your hand? Let's see how many hands are being raised. If you plan, or if your child plans on paper, that means you see like a flow chart or a mini story mountain or any sort of planning or some bullet points. We don't have many, Teacher Velvet. Okay, so why do your teachers tell you to plan and why do my stretches teachers um want you to plan? It's because during the exam, especially during the exam, many stress levels are there. Things can throw you off. You look at a question and go, oh, I've never seen such a topic before. So there are many emotions that are you're experiencing lots of emotions. With a clear plan, you stay grounded, right? You don't get distracted by things that pop up in your mind. You suddenly got inspired by an alternative storyline and you just go with that. So planning is really important. And creating a good plan is also a skill. Okay. So good high performing scripts, usually there's a plan. Okay, that's for my students who often score full marks or close to full marks. There's always a plan. Okay. Thorough development of the topic, meaningful use of at least one picture. We've looked at this already. Varied sentence structures. Okay, can you tell me, students, you just type out in chat again. Are you practicing using varied sentence structures? Are you doing that already? Do you practice writing varied sentence structures already? No? Do you know this paper two component called S and T? S and T. Synthesis and transformation. Synthesis and transformation is where you practice your use of varied sentence structures. And if you know how to use that kind of structures, like hardly does or hardly had I, blah, 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 no sooner, neither nor, unless, while, if you can use those sentence structures in your composition, you now have varied sentence structures, right? So varied sentence structures, not just for SNT, for composition as well, right? If you want to say, I do not want to go to the abandoned building. My friend also said no. You could use a neither nor sentence, right? Okay. So varied sentence structures. What an appropriate use of vocabulary and minimal language errors. We've covered that already. Okay. So this you already know. I'm not going to belabor, right? If you don't have a clear plan or well-written or well-thought plan, you might get lost during the exam. Leanne asks, if we have storylines in mind, is there still a need to plan? If the storyline is in your mind, so I want to say we can trust our brains, but sometimes we cannot trust it fully under stressful conditions. The storyline in your mind is so fluid because it's not written down. It keeps changing. And what's going to happen in the exam, which I see all the time, is that students just stare at the fan because they decided that, I think I want to change halfway through the composition. I want to change this idea. And they're spending 5 minutes just staring at the whirring fan, right? That's not ideal. So if you are going to spend 5 minutes staring at the fan or the ceiling, why not spend 5 minutes doing a proper plan at the start and follow it? Okay, so that's my advice. Repeating ideas across paragraphs. If you don't plan, this could happen. We've seen it all the time. We see it all the time. Weak introductions and conclusions. Okay, just now I talked about the clouds, the birds, the wind. So that's not a very strong introduction, though the language is beautiful. Conclusions. If you don't plan and you waste time writing an introduction that's not relevant, you're going to rush to conclude, right? Very often, students spend 2 minutes to write their concluding lines, which is like 2 sentences, and then they submit the paper. A conclusion has to be complete, a complete paragraph, thinking about what happened, thinking about how it has impacted your life. What are you going to do with this information that you have now, or this new values you have learned, etc. So there's some development in the conclusion. Okay, where to write your plan down? Any empty space on the test paper, okay, or any space, there will be space for you to jot down something. Okay, so do that. Inconsistent grammar control and overuse of memorized phrases. Memorized phrases, yes, you can memorize, but only use them when you know that you're using them correctly. Okay, and don't keep repeating those vivid phrases like three of the same phrases in the same composition. Some parents ask, then does my child have to write a composition every day to improve composition writing? And no, writing it's important, but is there somebody assessing it, giving feedback so that your child can do the second draft, right? If your child writes many compositions but no one ever looks at them, then it's not going to be effective. Okay? So it's important that you don't just write a lot, but you also think about, are you refining the skill? Every time you write the next one, are you getting better at a skill? And then you're applying it to the next composition. That's when you see your marks starting to increase. Okay? So focus on your skill. If you are receiving very general feedback, it's not going to be useful. Okay, so that's why sometimes you write a lot, but you are still not improving. You're not sure how to improve or how to do your corrections, and you don't even know how the rubric works. So today, many of these things are addressed already. Okay, we are sharing this with you. So targeted skill instruction. So in our English classes, when you meet your teacher, my special teachers in your writing class or English class, They are going to take you through a process, right? How to unpack, how to align your ideas with the theme, the picture, and so on. So it's all strategy, okay? Not just doing more, more, more. Um, if you're already a strong writer, just now I saw somebody saying that she's getting 33 upon 36. Yeah, that's a very good score, right? That means you're doing very well in content and language. So strong writers are trained to do a number of things. Firstly, they learn structure, not just the story mountain, but different ways of structuring a composition if they want to use certain techniques, right? Like flashback or and so on. Um, Strong writers also know that there are steps to take to develop an idea. Ideas don't just come randomly and leave you randomly, right? So techniques that we cover in our writing skills, okay, in our English classes, really important. Controlled sentence construction, so your synthesis and transformation paper two skills, don't throw them away. When your teachers are marking your composition, they correct your sentence structure for you, do your corrections, and write a few more sentences using that structure until you're super familiar with that structure, okay? Language accuracy is more important than trying to be very bombastic. If you're using a lot of vivid verbs, but you're making a lot of grammar errors, you'll still do poorly, okay? Of course, the marking requirements. So at this point, just pause for a while and show parents and students a sample, okay? So if you are a student here already, this is not new to you, okay? But I just want to take you through a few minutes to just show you what we mean by, techniques, structures, and so on. Okay, let me share my screen. This is a P5 worksheet in week 9 this week. So if you're a P5 student at MindStretcher, you are looking at this week, right? So you're tomorrow Sunday. So for many of you, MindStretcher students, you would have gone through this. The topic is friendship, but we don't just say, okay, now start writing. There's so many things we unpack, right? We unpack the topic, we unpack the pictures, we provide plot ideas. Because one of the main issues that students face is that they don't know what to write. They don't know how to start. So when we provide plot ideas, we're building your bank of ideas, right? You can use similar plot ideas in other compositions as well. Okay? Of course, writing skills. If you want to use a flashback, do it properly. You can also start your composition using technique 2, technique 3. Okay? So in class, parents, if your child is attending our English or writers class, um, students are given these samples and we encourage them to use it. Model after them or to tweak them to match their composition. Because if they just read and they don't use, it will never become part of uh, their bank, okay, their vocab bank and skills bank. So we encourage them to use it. Even something like that, the mind stretching version, where it's a more vivid, effective version of an original text, we encourage them to use it as well, if that is the storyline they want to work with on that particular day. But this is not the full compo, this is like the opening hook. Okay? And then students can continue from there. And lastly, of course, we provide vivid words and phrases and we get students to take them, to use them. I get my students to highlight it in the composition just so that they can see that they have used it. And I will check if they've used it correctly. Okay, so this is just a sample. Parents, if you have not seen your child's composition worksheet, this is how it looks like. And our teachers mark based on a rubric, like the one I showed you just now. Okay. Pause here for a while. Questions about paper 1. Any questions about paper 1? Hmm. No, I don't see any questions in the chat. Velvet, anything in Q&A for paper 1?
I've addressed some of them, but maybe if I can share
Yeah,
some of my own insights.
sure.
Some of you, right, when you are writing your compositions, you you may be actually good at certain things. Like you're very good at writing dialogues without any punctuation mistake, or you're very good at describing a character or solving a problem. So as much as you should identify the areas to work on in your own composition writing, I think it's also important to identify your strengths in your writing composition and keep them. Yeah, so this is just a thought I had while you were sharing. Thanks, Mavis.
Thank you, teacher Velvet. Leanne asks, how much time to spend on composition and situational writing? Situational writing, in general, about 15 to 20 minutes. 20 minutes is safe, okay? And then 50 minutes for composition. So 50 minutes, you spend about 5 minutes to plan, you have about 45 minutes to write and check your work. Okay, what are some good examples of introductions for flashback? Very good question. Come and attend my writing masterclass, okay? Sweaty, can we give them the link? Thank you very much. It's complimentary for all of you. Just come. It's free. Just come and attend because we are going to dive deep into these various techniques for writing, okay? So later on my colleague is going to post the link for that composition writing skills. It's a workshop. It's a workshop. Okay, come and learn something, and I'm going to dive deeper because this webinar is too short for me to talk about everything. Okay, how often to practice? Uh, writing a composition. Well, you have to look at your schedule because all of you have so many subjects. Some subjects you are still struggling with, so you need to look at your schedule. I'm not going to prescribe, but what I will say is, if you are writing a composition, you need to get it marked by someone who can mark it properly and grade you fairly, okay, using the rubric. And then after that, you need to do corrections or what some people call a draft tool. And then that draft tool has to be marked again by the same person. And then you receive the next time you receive it, it should not contain any more errors. If it still contains errors, then you're going to do your corrections again. So how long does that process take? Sometimes, given your busy schedule, it could take a week because you're also studying many different subjects. You're doing a lot of writing. Okay, so it depends, but that process has to happen. We have a tool called Compo Coach. We are working on refreshing it. So we have a number of tools. I'm going to interject myself at this point. We have a number of educational support tools to help our students. So Compo Coach is a compo marking app. So you can write compose and it's going to assess it for you. Okay, but we are in the midst of refreshing these tools and we'll be relaunching them sometime around Chinese New Year. Okay, so once they are relaunched, we will inform everybody. Okay, and it's going to yeah, we're going to inform everybody about it. So just stay tuned, okay? How many words? LZ is asking, how many words recommended for composition? Then, well, PSLE will say you have to write at least 150 words. 150 words is, frankly speaking, insufficient for content development. So if you want to hit the thoroughly developed 150 words, you won't be able to achieve that in 150 words. Okay? Because everything will be summarized. So I wouldn't say how many number of words, but in general, students who, without leaving a line, who write about 2 to 3 pages properly with the narrative arc, usually they'll get a good score. But again, I didn't look at your composition, so I wouldn't know. It really depends. Okay, some of you have bigger handwriting, smaller handwriting, so I wouldn't know. Don't count your words, please. Do not spend time or waste time counting your words. Just plan and make sure you have all the parts of a story out. Okay, I'm going to talk about that more in the writing workshop. Okay, in the writing workshop. Okay. Oops. Let's take a look. Which screen am I sharing now? Okay, I'm sharing the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, let's move on. For parents, so just now we have some questions. For parents, when your child returns you some marked work, don't just look at the marks. Look at the feedback and the kind of errors your child is making. That's a lot more valuable. Okay, because grades are pegged to the skills. So if the skills improve, then the grades will improve, right? Make sure that they do their corrections. I know it's tough, parents. I know sometimes I feel very frustrated nagging at my own child as well. But we try our best to remind them and fix a time for them to get these things done. Okay. Uh, Looking at their writing structure, not just how long they write. If you're unclear, always check with the teacher. Okay. So at my stretcher, please check with the teacher, make an appointment with the teacher, and find out more if you are not clear. And lastly, consistency. So very good student asks how often you have to write. If you're writing one composition every week or one composition every 2 weeks, you're already writing more compositions than a regular student, correct? Who just goes to school and maybe writes a composition once every 4 weeks or 5 weeks, right? So just be consistent. Don't say, yes, I'm going to write a composition every week. Then by the time you reach February, you're so tired, you don't want to write compositions anymore. Then that's not sustainable, right? Stamina is more important. Consistency. You have to pace yourself. Okay. Okay, paper two. I'm paper two, there are so many components. But the base, like I mentioned, is vocab and grammar. If we are looking at, so in general, this is the general advice for parents, right? Um, when your child, when you go through a paper with your child, okay, let's say you're doing that, get them to explain to you their answer. Because the correct answer cannot be the correct answer just because it sounds right or they guess. They must show that they are able to articulate that they have used a certain rule, okay, or certain logic to arrive at the right answer, or they are looking at a particular keyword. That's why they pick this answer. Then you know they are not just guessing. They are using certain skills. Okay, check if the answer matches the questions. For comprehension, if I'm asking for a place that your child talk about an event, so then it doesn't match. Make sure that they are looking for evidence from the text, especially for Compre OE. Some students are writing their answers based on short-term memory. So they thought they saw it in the text. They don't bother to flip back to the text. They just, based on short-term memory, just write down the answer. And then what happens? It's incomplete. So always go back to the text. If your answer is this, why do you say so? Oh, because the text says this. Visual text comprehension. See, at this part of the poster says this, and therefore my answer is this. They must always justify. Okay, and careless errors. Uh, I think most parents are battling with this. Just carelessness, not because your child doesn't know, but because they didn't check their work. So how does checking one's work look like? I often tell my students when I see them check their work, they're just flipping through the paper like that. I say, are you admiring your handwriting or are you checking your work? Checking your work is not just looking at your answers again, right? You are going to revisit the rules you apply. You're going to look at your annotations and you're going to make sure that whatever you shade in the OAS matches your answer. That's checking, right? Is your handwriting clear? So just now I saw someone wrote penmanship. Does your U look like an A? Does your I look like a J? Because you cannot go to the examiner and say, choose to write a U. If the examiner sees an A, the examiner sees an A, right? So make sure if you say, I'm checking my work, check that no one can pick on your handwriting. No one can argue that this is not an A or this is not a letter I. That is within your control. Your hand, your pen, your habit. Okay? If you ensure that you are clear in your writing, then to award you marks is just the next thing to do, right? Okay? So that's your responsibility, penmanship and checking your work. For paper two today, I'm looking at Compre OE because I'm not sure, Teacher Velvet, do many students and parents tell you Compre OE is where they are very nervous about, right? Yeah. Because it's like grammar MCQ, full marks, I can do it, editing, full marks, I can do it. But Compre OE, oh my gosh, I'm not even passing. So there is some tension for P5 students. When you do comprehension this year, you may find yourself um not being so accurate in your answers, and it's okay because you're learning. As long as you keep improving, you're fine. Okay? So don't have to be too anxious about not scoring. Maybe in P4 you scored full marks for compre. In P5 you're losing 10 marks. There is no need to panic. It is normal because the brain has to relearn and it takes time to learn new things. Okay? So you need to be patient with yourself. We're in January. Um Preparation. So question types, P6 students, I hope you already know this. There are various question types. When you look at a question, you know what it wants, what it's asking for. If you don't know yet, it's okay. We're going to have master classes on comprehension. Just come, okay? Answer precisely, not quote everything. So some students do that. I'm not sure what's the answer, so I just copy like more. That could make you lose marks as well, okay? Learning how to select relevant evidence. And of course, anything that's unnecessary, don't include it. Don't include it. Okay, this also applies for things like S&T. Do you add in a word? Do you not add in a word? If it's absolutely necessary because of the grammatical structure, then yes. If not, don't introduce a word that's unnecessary. Okay. Just a quick view of what we do here for comprehension. uh your your children should know this already. But it's whether they apply it or not. Okay, when they look at a question, do they straight away flip to the text and then start writing the answer, or do they really spend time practicing looking at keywords? What is the question asking for? How many marks is that question worth? How should my answer look like and be phrased? In what tense? How should I begin my answer? So all these are things that we can practice now, right? And by the time we reach PSLE, it's very fast for us to do it accurately. Okay? So over here, we use ELP. Our teachers guide our students through a series of steps, identifying keywords, um, going back to the text to identify specific clues to answer the question, asking important guiding questions, making links, and eventually phrasing the answer in a grammatical way that answers the question. Okay? So our teachers, for every question, especially the more challenging ones like the inferential questions or evaluative questions, our teacher will guide them more closely, especially at P5. At P6, your teachers might start to let you try more questions on your own because you are preparing for the exam. Okay? So parents, I don't expect you to know all these techniques and skills and sit with your child to guide them through all these techniques and skills. But some things you can do to keep them in check would be check. Did they highlight any keyword in the question, or is their paper so clean? Right? Did they highlight any keywords? Are they able to tell you, oh, this is a literal question, the answer is in the text, right? Or it's a vocabulary question. uh, are they able to phrase their answers in a way that just answers the question, not going on and on? Okay, so these are things that if you take a glance, you can quickly spot. And if you don't spot these, you can remind your child to do so. Okay? Oral communication, 20%. Low hanging fruit. Is it possible to get full marks? Yes, absolutely. Uh, Reading aloud, like I mentioned, most students, again, there are going to be oral communication masterclass, just come, we'll dive deeper. But for today, I'm going to look at SBC, stimulus-based conversation, because a lot of students get stuck. So very often they get stuck, or they just talk and ramble. And then they forget what they said, and then they repeat. So it's very unstructured and random. Okay, so that's one problem that we often see. Or they don't know what to say, or they're extremely hesitant. So long pauses between sentences or ideas. Okay? And then after a while, they forgot the question that was asked. So that could happen as well. Or when the teacher asks guiding questions to prompt your child, your child just gives the teacher another one sentence. Okay, so sometimes it is a lack of content. So that one we can build. In the oral master classes, we will share more with you what to do to prepare, right? But if you already have ideas and they're just sometimes you can remember them, sometimes you can't remember them, or you don't know what to say, that means you lack a particular framework. Okay? So read is for reading aloud, something that we cover here. But today we're going to look at peers, okay? Peers. A framework we use to recommend to help our students frame their ideas for oral. So in terms of oral SBC, a structure, you need a structure. You need to know expansion technique. So what do you mean by say more? Say more. What say more? Do I give examples? Do I provide an experience? Do I reflect? When I share an experience, do I share the details? Do I share the 5W1H? So these are all expansion techniques, okay? Sentence construction, sentences gonna be grammatical. Examiner style questioning practice. So do you get exam-like questions? Do you get someone to listen to you and give you feedback? Okay. So it's practice. Now, for parents, you may not be trained in examining your child like in the exam, but what we can do in our day-to-day interactions with our children is a few things. Firstly, when you ask them something, try to ask an open-ended question. Okay, so let me give an example. For example, did you have lunch today? It's a close-ended question. So your child will just say yes or no, full stop. How to elaborate? Cannot elaborate. We cannot elaborate. But if you ask your child, what is the best food you tasted this week? Then your child cannot say yes, no. Your child is like, the chicken rice from block 123. And you're not going to let your child off with just that one sentence. You're going to say, what is so nice about that chicken rice? Describe it to me. Don't let your child off with just one sentence answers. So always ask why and how. Okay, ask open-ended questions. Okay, don't say, so did you have a good day? Close-ended. What's the most interesting thing that happened to you today? Open-ended question. Okay, so get them used to elaborating in a non-threatening setting because I'm just chatting with my mom. I don't need to be stressed. Okay, and once they're used to that, it's easier for them to look at the framework and expand their ideas. Okay. So over here, we're going to move into Q&A very soon. So in terms of what parents can do, I know parents, you are doing your best already, given your schedule, your own work, and so on. You're trying your best to be there for your child to make sure that there is consistent practice and so on. And you are here at my stretcher, of course, because you trust that we can support you on this journey. So today's briefing is to share with you also what we can do, so to show you sample worksheets and so on. And please ask us questions. What we do here is to really align it to the exams. So anything that we design for your child is meant to guide them to eventually do well in specific components, right? Whether it's the materials or the teachers teaching or strategies in class, these are things that we focus on, right? So it's training, targeted correction, and at different points, at different times of the year, we have our revision practices and we have our milestones, our mid-year checkpoint and our end-of-year checkpoint. Okay, for P6 students, you're going to do a prelim paper, a full prelim paper, paper 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we put all these in to make sure that we are preparing you for the exams. Okay, it is now 8:25. If you have any question, a burning question, okay, not so much of content, because deep dive into content, like how to write a good intro, come and attend our masterclass, okay? But something related to the marking or something I've not covered, please feel free to ask me and teacher Velvet as well. How are you? A student asks, how are you? I am, I'm, I'm doing good. Today I had a long day. I started my day quite early. I'm sure teacher Velvet as well, okay? Because we teach during weekends, weekdays, okay, from morning to evening, we're working, but we're trying to stay energetic. Questions about any of the papers, one, two, three, and four, that you're not so sure, or you heard something from a parent forum, and you're not sure if it's true, you can also clarify it with us. Let me see if there are any in Teacher Violet, anything in the Q&A? Let's see, no, right? Oh, oh, okay, you're done.
Generally addressed already.
Mm,
So like in terms of doing how often should you do composition, right? It depends on like is it an area that you really need to work on very strongly because doing corrections and reviewing model compositions also help. Yeah.
mm,
Uh then in terms of like writing techniques that we can look at, we can use rhetorical questions for composition writing amongst other techniques like character development, figurative language, etc. Oh, and I've also indicated the date for the writing workshop on 7 February on Saturday. Yeah, 7 to 9:30. But we'll invite everyone again, right?
yes, yes, we will just follow us on actually just all our events are on Luma. So Sweti, could you please give parents the link to see all the events at Mind Stretcher and just go and register, register. Okay, can do that. Because they're all complimentary for all of you. Okay, for all of you. Just some questions came in. How would you suggest PSLE students prep English? Like I mentioned, if you're already scoring full marks for grammar, should you be spending a lot of time doing grammar MCQ every day? No. Are you still getting are you still getting only 2 marks for S&T? Ah, that's what you should be practicing. So depending on what you need to work on it first. I know it's not pleasant to work on something that you're not good at, like writing, like Compre OE, but that's precisely where you need to work on. Okay, so you need to plan around it, and then of course you revisit things that you're good at again, but not as often as those that you need a lot more practice. How do we build vocabulary? Some students, they carry a vocabulary bank book with them. Okay, what every time they hear a new word or see a new word in the worksheet, they just jot it down. That requires a lot of discipline. It can feel tedious, but one basic thing you can do is every time you come across a new word, don't just let it go. Look at it, learn its meaning, see how it's used in a sentence, in many sentences, and then you try to use it. If you don't want to write it, it's okay. You say it out. Use it in speech. Once you can use it correctly a few times, you are now more confident, and now it is part of your vocabulary bank. Okay, vocabulary MCQ. There are vocabulary MCQ very often either the words look alike. Okay, especially for MCQ, they look alike. So you need to know the meanings of these words, and they won't give you words that are beyond you, right? These are words that uh, a student who has gone through 6 years of education, looking at so many words in the English language, should know. Okay, we have in our materials vocabulary lists, my stretching vocabulary lists. We have our vocabulary booklets termly. You are going to receive yours in week 12. It's a booklet with 10 themes. Every theme, there are 10 words or phrases. You can start there. Okay? So there's always something to learn. Yes, model composition. Thank you, Angela, for raising that. Model compositions, useful to read, but let's not stop at reading. Today I was having a chat with a parent, right? The child has graduated, but so the parent was recalling, what the child did when the child was in P6, they got the child the AL1. And we were talking about composition models. And I said, one thing that students can do is when they receive a model, to Practice modeling after it. You might say, but this is not my composition. I know, but it's a well-written composition. And when you see yourself studying it, rewriting it, understanding, it becomes part of you. So that rewriting is actually beneficial. But if you do it blindly, it won't work. So my mom say, copy this paragraph, okay, oh, you copy blindly, then it won't work. You must look at an see, today I want to copy the opening hook of this model composition. What technique was used? What vivid words are used? Do I know how to use all these words? If now I cover the introduction hook, I remember these words. Can I write my own opening hook? So that's how we can use model compositions. Of course, we need to read them too, but we don't stop there, okay? If you want to improve your vocabulary, every time you come across a new word, like I mentioned, find out the meanings. Vocab MCQ, right? There are always four options. Does your child know the meaning of all the words? That's the one of the most straightforward things you can do. Knowing the meanings of these words. Then the next thing is how to use them. Can she construct sentences with them correctly? Okay, then we know she has learned it. Okay. How to improve editing? Editing is grammar and spelling. So if you know your grammar rules, half the battle is won. You need to know how words work within a sentence. Spelling, commonly misspelled words. I think our students, we give out commonly misspelled word lists. So you will receive it, and your teachers will go through some with you in class. For that list, make sure you can spell all the words in that list. So if you can't spell, you try your best phonetically piece it together. But they won't test you words that you've never seen before, right? This is not a PhD in English or something like that, right? We are doing just PSLE. So words that you have come across in all your school papers, mind stretcher, learn how to spell them. Okay? Learn how to spell them. Thank you, Sweaty, for sharing that link. The writing masterclass, yes. Please join me and then we'll dive deeper. I don't see, yeah, thank you, Teacher Velvet, right? Yeah, break them up. I don't see any questions in the, let me see, Q&A. Teacher Velvet, thank you for answering them. What are some books that has multiple flowery phrases? There are many books. There are many model composition books. We have our model composition book as well. But if you're a Mind Stretcher student, you already have many models to refer to, more than enough for you to, and every worksheet, compre close, editing, grammar close, there is a whole list of mind stretching vocabulary, words and phrases. So they are there already. When you read a comprehension, right, Shafia, when you read a comprehension, I want to ask all of you, when you read a comprehension OE passage, can you learn vocabulary? Yes. Can you learn composition writing skills from a comprehension passage? Yes. So whatever you come across in all papers, transfer that knowledge across papers. Okay? Anywhere, anytime you see a phrase or word, you can learn it and use it. So endless. How parents learn how to mark. So if you refer to the rubric, let me see. Well, teachers, they go through training and so on. But if we just look at the rubric, like I mentioned earlier on, uh, is it from start to end relevant if the topic is about honesty? Right from the start in the opening paragraph, do we have an honest or dishonest person? Is this person going to transform along the way? Is there an honest or dishonest act? Then in the reflection, did this person reflect upon the importance of being honest? So it must be fully relevant like that. How to interpret the rubrics? Very subjective. No, it's very objective. It's as objective as it can be, like I mentioned. Okay, so fully relevant means start to end. Um, so if you look at the errors, the errors here, right? Hardly any errors, one or two. Few errors, 3 to 5. Some accuracy is when there are more errors per line. Okay. Varying degrees of accuracy means you actually see whole sentence errors quite often until lots of red marks. Okay, so yeah, we will. This is interesting. We will consider sharing more with our parents in terms of looking at your child's compo. Okay, but we have tools. So actually, once we relaunch, refresh and relaunch Compo Coach can help you with that. Help you with that. Okay, then you don't have to feel so stressed because it's also when we design Compo Coach, it's also aligned to the rubric. Okay, I don't see any new questions coming in, so thank you, students and parents, for joining us tonight. Okay, if there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. But in the meantime, sign up for our master classes, and then we are going to dive deeper in all these various components. Okay, thank you, Teacher Velvet, for joining us this evening. Thank you, Sweat for supporting us. Sweat, are there any links we want to share with our parents before we close the briefing? Thank you, Elsa. Thank you, Sanjay. Bye bye. Thank you. Thank you, Sweat. Okay, so just check out events there. Bye. Good night, everybody.